Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, Sow, Grow, Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of Sow, Grow, Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense, and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together, we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper, and our guest today is Susan. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Pancakes for Roger. Susan's journey began with a heartfelt tribute to her father, Major General Roger Combs, a Vietnam War veteran who battled throat cancer due to Agent Orange exposure. From a simple wish for pancakes to a nationwide movement, Susan has turned a personal loss into a mission of giving back to the brave men and women who serve our country. Her innovative approach to fundraising and community engagement has propelled Pancakes for Roger to incredible heights, making a tangible difference in the lives of veterans. Well, welcome to the podcast, Susan.
Thanks so much, Haley.
So can you start by sharing a little bit more about the emotional journey that led you to create Pancakes for Rogers and how your father's legacy continues to inspire your work?
Sure. So Pancakes for Roger, it's funny, it depends on the day on what it's going to be. It's a keynote, it's a book, it's a nonprofit, but it actually all started from a request from my father. So I grew up in a small town of about 1,000 people in the northwest corner of Missouri, and I moved to New York City 23 years now, actually. And so when my father was diagnosed with Agent Orange-related throat cancer in 2008, and we had 10 relatively good years, and then the last year of his life, he relapsed twice. And so we knew after it came back, that was the beginning of the end. And my dad and I were extremely close. And so I went back very frequently. And then before we were putting him on hospice, I moved back to Missouri to help care for him while he was on hospice. So he and I had a cadence because we were both the type A's in our family. And I'd get up, I'd check on him. If he was good, I would go to the gym. If he was still good when I got back, I would get ready for the day. And then I would get him ready for the day. But one morning after I'd gone to the gym and come back, I went to his hospital bed because we were fortunate enough to have, and he wasn't in his hospital bed. And my parents' house went into a circle. So I just kept going room to room to room until I ended up in the kitchen and my dad was there. And I looked at him and he had a placemat out and he had set the table. And I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I want pancakes for breakfast." And my father had a feeding tube the last year of his life. And he was also on oxygen. So if any of your listeners and viewers have dealt with somebody on oxygen, they know that if the levels get low, you can get some confusion. So when he requested pancakes, because he said, I want pancakes for breakfast. And I looked at him and I said, oh, Dad, there's nothing more that I want to give you than pancakes for breakfast. But I'm like, we're on hospice. We have a DNR. If you choke, we're done here. And I don't think we're quite ready to be done. And my dad said, oh, yes, I can. Matt said I could. And Matt was my brother, and he's a nurse, and he wasn't there that morning. So I knew we were dealing with some confusion from his oxygen levels being low. So I looked at him and I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I took his tube feeding formula over to the microwave because the general always wanted to heat it up for 14 seconds, never 15, never 13, he would know. And so I heated it up and came back to the table and I sat down the pitcher and he said, what's that? And I said, that's your syrup. And so his oxygen levels rallied around. He knew what I was talking about and he smiled and was resigned. And a few short weeks later, my father would ultimately pass away. And I came back to New York and I took one day off of work. Anybody that's been a caregiver knows how even just a mother can be a caregiver, right? It doesn't have to be somebody that's dying. It's tireless and you're always on. And there's a lot of stress that comes with that. And so I took one day off of work and my husband said to me, why don't we go have some pancakes for your dad? And so we went to our local diner. My husband snapped a picture and I just told a little bit of the story on social media and said, if you're so inclined, why don't you go have some pancakes to Roger and remember all the great things that you have in your life and all the blessings that you have to be thankful for. Because in the end of the day, it's the little things that really make the greatest impact. So I was just sharing part of my heart, part of my sorrow. I never expected to go anywhere. And then people started having pancakes and they started sending me pictures and sending me emails and saying, I can't have pancakes and not think about your dad. And I talked to my kids about service and I talked to my kids about military. And so then from there, it became a fundraising effort for the University of Missouri School of Law Veterans Clinic that provide free legal services for veterans and their families navigating the VA claims and appeals process, discharge upgrades, and a lot of other things. So every February, we run a campaign called Pancakes to Roger. So for every pancake loving picture that we get on social media, either using the hashtag Pancakes to Roger or tagging our accounts, then I make a donation to the Veterans Clinic in my dad's honor. So it had started out that way, and then it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And then the end of last year, I launched an official nonprofit because I just know that there's so much more than we can do than outside of just fundraising efforts. But it's last year, or actually this year, rather. So this past February, we got all 50 states, all 7 continents, and 29 additional countries. And our donation was nearly double that of years prior. So it's just been such a rewarding thing. And that kids can grow up on Pancakes to Roger because we started this 6 years ago. So this was our 6th year of campaigning. And it's just been so great. And then the book followed, and then keynotes followed, and the nonprofit followed. But it all came back to just gratitude and knowing that just little things can make such a big impact.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm getting chills as you're sharing this story because it's just such a beautiful story of both heartache, but also this idea of turning that heartache into helping other people and rallying around a cause and being grateful for the life and the blessings that we have. And I just thank you for your courage to post that first photo and see the ripple effect that it has had now. And through, like you said, keynotes and now starting a nonprofit, which is a whole nother thing in and of itself. So the idea of the pancake for breakfast in your father's memory blossomed into a best-selling book and now a successful nonprofit. What were some of the key milestones and challenges you have faced over the last 6 years?
I think when you lose somebody that's basically like the spearhead of a family, there's usually somebody that has to step into that role. And for my family, because I had a very similar thought process to my dad, that was me. And so when it came to the first year after my dad was gone, I put in 4 hours of what I called family office time into my calendar because my dad he was a general civilian job. He was a judge. We have 2 farms back in Missouri. There was just a lot of stuff to go through. And I knew that it was just going to be a lot on my mother. And so she knew that, okay, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time, that was her time. So she knew when she got mail, I would call her and we'd do like a Zoom meeting and we'd go through things and she would show me things and I would tell her what to do, tell her what needed to be done, scan things, email things, mail things. And I remember probably a month or so after my dad passed, My brother Matt called me and he said, "How's your day?" And I said, "Well, I've logged 14 hours of phone calls this week to the VA, to the Department of Defense, to Arlington, to all this stuff." And my brother's, "Well, do you need any help?" And I'm like, "Well, not now. I did 14 hours. I've got it good." I think that that was something that I wish they would teach that in school. They don't teach us to have those hard conversations. I had a lot of hard conversations with my dad, which were gut wrenching, but then I knew exactly what he wanted. I knew exactly what his wishes were. I knew where all the passwords were. I knew who the plumber was, who the electrician was, who to sell the Winnebago to. Like, I knew those things because I had the courage to have those conversations. So that was one of the first things I think was the hardest thing for me, because I really lost my partner in our family. My dad and I were just so, so close. And my brother and mother are very similar in personality, which is very different than my dad and I. So that can have its own issues, if you will, because my dad and I were very logical thinkers. My brother and my mother tend to be more emotional thinkers. And so learning how to navigate that. And then I think since I threw myself into family office time so much, I didn't get a lot of the grieving process like a lot of people do. And so when I decided to write the book, Pancakes to Roger, a mentorship guide for slaying dragons, it wasn't supposed to be about my dad. I had people after me to write a book for a while. And when I publicly speak, I would a lot of times end my talks with like unsolicited advice and give quotes from people that had mentored me along the way and thought it would be like cool to be like, hey, have the quote be a chapter, talk about the person, talk about how you could use the information. And I thought, so my dad was supposed to be one chapter. And then I got to writing and my dad really took over the whole book. And so it was such a healing thing for me. I ugly cried every single week when I wrote because I just didn't get that grieving time because I had to go into work mode so quickly after he passed. So that was something I guess I hadn't anticipated. Also with starting a nonprofit too. I started my first company at 26. I know how to make money. I'm a Taurus. I'm all about the money, how you make money, what do you do to make money? But nonprofit world's a lot different. And I've served on boards and I've been national president of a women's insurance organization, but it's a lot different when it's your own. And it's a lot different when it just pulls on your heartstrings, because since it is a tribute to my father's legacy, I have a tremendous amount of pressure to get it right. And so those are the things that it's just nobody tells you, you don't think about, but it's just if you surround yourself by the right people, having a CPA that only does nonprofits, having an attorney that only does nonprofits so that they can help navigate those things. Because I'll tell you, the nonprofit world, there's a lot of free stuff for nonprofits like Google Analytics and Google Ads and free Canva accounts and things like that, that you just don't even know that's out there because it's just a different animal. So having those people that also own nonprofits to have as a peer-to-peer mentor has been hugely helpful too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so honored that you would share that with me and our listeners, and just your courage to face all that you had to face and really be that stronghold for your family after your dad died. And something you mentioned was we're not taught how to have difficult conversations. And that's why I like to have this podcast, because that's what we talk a lot about, is having difficult conversations. And especially in the workplace or in any relationships, conflict is bound to happen. And if it's not, that's probably a sign that something's wrong. So, so I would love to know, what were some of the key lessons or key things that you utilize to be able to navigate some of those difficult conversations, and how do you use them to this day?
So, my dad just had these quotes and sayings that we just grew up with. And to be honest, like some of it I thought everybody knew. And then I would come out with something and somebody's, oh my God, where did that come from? And I'm like, oh, that was my dad. I think it's like a lesson we learned early on is it's important for you to be understood, but it's more important for you not to be misunderstood. I work professionally as an expert witness a lot. I'm an insurance broker. And that was something that my dad told us a long time ago, because I think sometimes I came from a town of 1,000 people. And sometimes I think, especially as women, we feel like we don't deserve a seat at the table. And so sometimes we'll try to use big flowery words to impress people. And that doesn't get you anywhere if people don't understand what you're saying. So that was something that my dad always said. It's better to put things in layman's terms, because nobody is questioning what you're saying. They understand what you mean and you mean what you say. So that was a lesson that we always got growing up. Another one was drive the car. So for your listeners, yes, my father was military, but I also grew up 6 miles away from the dairy farm that my grandparents had. So the dairy farm is now a grain farm and cattle farm. And those people that have grew up on farms usually are driving at a much younger age. So a lot of us are driving on the farm at 10, 12, some even 8. But since my father was a judge, when it came to highway driving, my dad did follow the rules. And so when it came to highway driving and we had our learner's permit, my dad would always have the cadence, drive the car, drive the car, drive the car. And he would always say, you could be the best driver around, but you have to be, aware of your surroundings. And he would literally grab the steering wheel and jerk it while we were driving and make us go off the road. So we had to keep our composure and understand how to handle the situation. So that really became a metaphor in my life for how to handle a situation. So sometimes I think we can get so overwhelmed with things, or a project just seems so big that we can't fathom accomplishing it. But if we can just drive the car and put first things first, break things down into simple tasks, and then move forward, then it can be helpful. So for example, the drive the car situation when I was caring for my dad when he was on hospice, is anybody that has hospice at home will know that your house can be a freaking pharmacy. There's a lot of heavy medications and things like that because usually the person's in a lot of pain. And it's to help them relax and help them give them comfort. And so we'd had the medication just out and then we would dose it out and things like that. Well, one day my dad, he got up and in the morning he took his nighttime meds at the day. And so then he couldn't really wake up all day. So the drive the car of that was, we're going to put away all the medication except for what he's able to take. And so it's not dangerous for him. And it's when somebody's on hospice, there's a lot of out of sight, out of mind type of thing. So we put away everything. We just left out his doses, even at night. So if he got up and he was uncomfortable and he wanted to take something, he was able to, the syringe was pre-filled, he could take it and then he was good to go. So those were things that sometimes you just have to stop and remember your teachings. My dad had a lot of them. Another one that came from him was the 3 facets of life. He said, yes, your life is comprised of a lot of different things, but when you think about it, it really comes down to 3 things. It has the person that you're with, the place that you live, and the thing that you do professionally. And he said, it's like a 3-legged stool. And he said, if you're happy with 2 or 3 of those at any given time, you're pretty much doing all right. If you're 3 out of 3, you're living a golden life. But he said, if you're happy with only 1 or none of those, only you're the person that can empower yourself to get off your butt and do something about it. So that's something that I've always taken into account, that if something just doesn't seem right and I'm not happy, I'm like, okay, is work causing me distress right now? Is my marriage causing me distress? I love New York City, but if you are not from New York City, there will come a time where you hate New York City. It just happens. And so sometimes you just need a break from it. And so then it's one time I moved across country and I learned that was a mistake the second day I was there. But understanding that sometimes you just need a break from things just to recalibrate is very important too.
Wow, your dad sounds like just a wonderful man with so many wonderful insights that have still just played into your life today. And I just love the way that you are able to utilize those in difficult situations. And something you mentioned earlier is that you started a business at 26 and now you're starting a nonprofit. So I would love to know your insights on what are some of the differences that you have seen now coming into the nonprofit space from the for-profit, and are there any principles that apply?
At the end of the day, business is business. I'm 45, so my company in June will be 19 years old. So it's business is business. So I think that when you're selling a product versus selling a concept, it's very different. So insurance, can be a concept, but it can also be a product in my own insurance brokerage firm. But when it comes to a nonprofit, it's usually more a possibility. So what I mean about that is Pancakes, the nonprofit, we're in the process of building an endowment. So right now, we're running the Veterans Clinic and raising money and making donations to the Veterans Clinic. But the idea is, as we build this endowment over the next couple of years, we're going to be able to provide grants for veterans that want to do good in their backyards and beyond. And eventually, I think that we can do, tying in some of my business background, do like a soldier Shark Tank. I think that would be so cool because, man, when I started my first company at 26 years old, if somebody had said, hey, here's $5,000, here's $10,000, that would have made a massive difference to me. That's enough money to set up a website, set up your insurance, set up getting a CPA, getting an attorney, getting incorporated. Those are the things that just, I think, would have drastically helped. I will say that it's different because I think there's a lot more pressure on the nonprofit. because I think it's more personal. I had a friend that told me, his name's Dominic Fortino, and he owns the CrossFit gym I attend. And he said to me, he's like, Susan, I read one time that people die twice. He said, once when their body passes and they move on to wherever they're going. And the second time is when the last person speaks their name. And so by starting the nonprofit, it's a way to continue my dad's legacy and all the work that he did. My dad served in 3 branches of the armed services for 39 years and 4 months. He mentored so many people. He was one of those guys that was good when no one was watching. And one of the things I am cognizant of, and I say in my book, is I know not everybody had a great father, but I really did. And so the most rewarding thing for me, like just with about the book, and has made me want to do the nonprofit and want to do more, is I have a good friend that she grew up in foster care in New York City. And she said to me, Susan, I got your book because I didn't know what a good father was. And I never got fatherly advice growing up. And so she said, I wanted to know what it was like and what were some of the things that if I had a dad that had been present, what I might have benefited from. So she said, you're never too old to learn. So let me learn from Roger. If that doesn't give you the stamina to continue on, I don't know what does. But it does create a tremendous amount of pressure. So I think that's one of the things that I didn't realize with nonprofit is that when it's based on somebody's life and the good that you want to impact in the world, it's a lot more pressure than being an expert witness and testifying on a medical malpractice claim,
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that in terms of people's lives are on the line or you are leaving a legacy of someone's life. And there's a lot of meaning in that and a lot of impact that you can leave from carrying on that legacy. And I can understand how that could feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders because you want it to carry on. You said this last February that you had your most successful campaign. And it was through social media for Pancakes for Roger, which has been a tremendous success. Could you elaborate on the strategy behind it and how it has helped in increasing awareness and bringing people into your mission?
To be honest, it was grassroots. So one of the things that I learned, because when we started the fundraising efforts and things like that, it was just my company, my insurance brokerage is called Combs and Company. And I also have a consulting practice there. So everything was under that brand. And then when I wrote the book, I worked with a company called Scribe. They're my publisher. Lioncrest is my publisher. And one of the things that I learned during that process is that a lot of times you'll see books have their own social media handles. If you're not established in the book space, that's a mistake because they need your followers to follow you and follow what you're doing. So when I started out, everything was still under my brand, Susan Combs, Combs and Company, things like that. And so we gradually built a following. So we built a following under that brand. And then we only launched the social media brands about 1.5 years ago. The book was established and people got to know what Pancakes for Roger was. Then that's when we established the social media channels. And then I incorporated Pancakes for Roger December of 2023. And then that's when things shifted to pancakesforroger.org instead of .com and just made some gentle shifts that way. But when we started out, it's like we were not asking people for money. We were just asking them to have pancakes and take a picture. So it was heartwarming. And my dad had a far reach. He was stationed at the Pentagon and then he was at Crystal City was his last post and 3 branches and being a judge and prosecuting attorney before that. He had a far reach. And so we capitalized off that. And my dad was such a role model and mentor and supporter of so many that other people wanted to pay it in return. So it's just been very rewarding.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I hear that you're saying also you've not only created this movement where people eat pancakes and take pictures and this heart are able to participate in honor of him, but you've also instilled this sense of community. And so, do you have any advice for nonprofits maybe want to do a social media campaign to continue to create that sense of community?
I think it depends on, you have to connect with the right people. So it's just, you have to connect with, it's a veterans nonprofit, right? So it's just, so I'm reaching out to my friends that are veterans. I'm a big CrossFit strongman person. So I connect to the working out because we actually did our first Dragon Slayer competition, which was a weightlifting competition in February. We're going to be doing a virtual one that starts on D-Day, 80th anniversary of D-Day, which is June 6th, and is going to be a virtual one that runs 3 weeks. So it's connecting the different communities was already in. I think if you're starting a nonprofit that's not related to who you are, I think that's an uphill battle. But I think if there's things, everybody's always known I was pro military, always known that I was big into working out. So it's just, so it's been a natural segue to get people involved that way because those were already my communities. And then it was just unifying those circles.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing if listeners are like listening and want to think about ways that they can increase that community is already looking at who's in their network or where do they hang out and starting to talk about it and invite people in to celebrate with you and be a part of the mission. As Pancake for Rogers continues to grow, what are some of the initiatives or projects you are excited about?
So, like I said, we're getting ready to do a virtual competition. So, we're pretty excited about that. I think we might have one or two other virtual things going on this year. We've talked about like virtual 5K walk, run type of thing, or how you'll see those challenges for like veteran suicide with 22 sit ups because we lose 22 veterans every day and to suicide. So, talking about like some of those type of things. But I also think that there's a lot of ways to partner with other organizations because the thing is, we're not a mentorship program. We're not a vocational rehab where we're trying to get people jobs. We're truly going to be a grant program and also make them aware of some certain things. Because with my work with the Veterans Clinic at the University of Missouri, it became apparent that a lot of veterans don't know about veterans clinics. So veterans clinics, veterans legal clinics, a lot of major universities have them. So we're also talking about creating a page on our website that has just information for those veterans clinics. Because a lot of times, I know one of our board members was a Desert Storm veteran and a paratrooper there, and he had no idea about veterans clinics until I started talking to him about them. So it's just since they provide free legal services, a lot of times with VA claims, they take on average 7 years. If you go to the VA website, that's what they say. 14% of our veterans pass away during that process. And it's just, a lot of times they just don't know where to go. So having that space for them. We also are actually launching this week a wall of honor on our website. So we're encouraging people to submit veterans and they could still be living or they could be passed to just honor them on our wall of honor. So we're getting people that are making donations to place a name on our wall, which is pretty cool. But we're also encouraging them to send pictures. So if they have a picture of their veteran, they can be in uniform or they could have their favorite veterans hat on or something like that. It's just, I think that I have such an affinity for our veteran community. And a lot of times, I actually had a meeting today that with a JAG attorney, which is a military attorney, and his retirement date is in June. And he said, Susan, he said, when we retire, they're just like, hey, good luck. Here you go. He said they don't give us any direction. They don't talk to us about a lot of that stuff. So I think being able to connect some veterans with some different opportunities or just saying, hey, this is another veterans organization. Did you know about this? There's a former senator in Missouri, Jason Kander, that actually has a tiny homes community for veterans. And so I think at some point we might try to get involved with there, maybe build a Pancakes for Roger house at one of their veteran communities or help them build some other places and other locations too.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I am very excited about all the things that you are envisioning for Pancakes for Roger. And you mentioned that the Veterans Clinic at the University of Missouri has been a significant beneficiary of your fundraising efforts. Can you tell me a little bit more about the clinic's work and the impact of the donations on the veterans and families?
Yeah, so the Veterans Clinic actually started 10 years ago. January 2024 was the 10-year anniversary. And in that 10 years, they have accumulated more than $60 million in back pay for our veterans. And so what they do is it's part of the law school at the University of Missouri. And they are basically training these ambassadors for our veterans. And so a lot of times there are veterans that are actually going through law school. So they want to be a part of the Veterans Clinic because they want to help people that also served. But the Veterans Clinic also has started working with the University of Missouri Medical School too. So they bring in medical students. Maybe they have previous military service, maybe they don't, but they have the expertise to read the medical records on the claims. So then they can help advise and make the cases a lot more effective. And not only with the VA claims and appeals process, because a lot of times it's just, hey, you didn't check this box or you didn't understand this question properly. So it's helping them get ahead of that stuff so that they don't have to deal with appeal, but also discharge upgrades. Sometimes there can just be, hey, it's just a broad brush, but there are extenuating circumstances, and they can help them go back and revisit those things. Or if they were, say, classified as partially disabled and they missed being classified as total disabled by 10%, is there something else that was missing that could get them the extra 10%? Because once they're classified as 100%, the benefits just really are really good and lucrative for our veterans, and they deserve it. They were injured or they were harmed while they were serving for our country and our freedoms. So they should be taken care of. So they do a lot of things like that, but then they also have an annual symposium for veterans. So the annual symposium for veterans, they do it on site in Columbia, Missouri, but then they also have a Zoom component too. But it's a chance for veterans to get together and just see each other. But then also they'll talk about different topics. One year they talked about traumatic brain injury. One time they talked about sexual violence. So they talked about different topics. And so things that resonated that may help them understand what services and help that there is for them to get as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And thank you for the work that you're doing through the Veterans Clinic and just giving access to resources for the people who have served our country. And like you said, they deserve it. So for our listeners who are inspired by your story and want to support or get involved with Pancakes for Rogers, what are some of the ways they can contribute or participate in your mission?
So they can just head to the website, pancakesforroger.org, and that'll have a lot of information. It'll give the backstory about my dad. It'll give the backstory about how Pancakes for Roger came about, any events that we're having, any media that we're having. But at the end of the day, we would love for you just to have some pancakes in February and share the story on social media and tag us so that we can get donations for our veterans. I will say we do have sponsorship opportunities. So if this story is tugging on your heartstring and you have a veteran that you're just know that they can benefit from some of this stuff in the future, we will gladly take your money too.
Of course. Yeah. I'm a fundraiser, so I like that plug as well with sponsorship. And I think it's such a wonderful mission. So if anyone is listening and inspired, we will link to the donate page in the show notes. And I hope that you click on it and give to such a wonderful mission. Well, thank you, Susan, for sharing your incredible journey with us, your story of your father. I feel so blessed that you would share it with us. And your story is a powerful reminder of how personal loss can really lead to profound community impact. Like I said to our listeners, be sure to follow Susan and Pancake for Roger. Again, we'll share that in the show notes. And we're recording this the day after Memorial Day, where we honor veterans and support their invaluable contributions to our society. Well, thank you, Susan. I appreciate it.
And thanks so much, Haley. I appreciate it too.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.